Without further ado, we are so excited for our guest tonight. His name is Eric Rygg, and he is the president of Silver Spring Foods. Now, when you think of horseradish, first of all, that's a really hard word to say. Am I right?
Yes, that is. It's hard to
Uh,
market too. Horseradish. Yeah.
oh, I bet. So, when you think of it, I guess I don't always think of Wisconsin, um, but Wisconsin is a really big contributor to horseradish. I'm gonna just butcher that all the entire
We're
night.
just going to be stumbling all night.
Oh my gosh. All right. So before we get started talking about the crop and how it's grown in Wisconsin and all the great products that you guys make at Silver Spring, do you just want to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you kind of got into working with Silver Spring?
So yeah, I would love to do that. My name is Eric Rygg. I'm the president of Silver Spring Foods, and Hunsinger Farms is our farming operation. Our claim to fame is we are the world's largest grower and processor of horseradish. So we might be the single largest grower, but it's hard to verify that. Or we might be the largest processor. Again, hard to verify that without having everybody's numbers. We're all generally private companies. But no one is doing both on the same scale that we're doing. It's unusual to do both the growing and the processing. And it gives us a lot of advantages, and I'll get into a little bit of that later. But I'm a fourth generation horseradish farmer. So my great grandfather, his name was Ellis Hunsinger, started the company in 1929. He was a door to door lightning rod salesman before he got back into farming. His family was in farming. He grew up on a farm. And one of the reasons why he pivoted back into agriculture was, I think, one, there's so many lightning rods you can sell. It's not a lot of repeat customers there. And two, farming and agriculture is something he was familiar with, and it was a way to feed his family. And so, why horseradish? That's a great question. Why here? Well, he grew other things to start. He grew corn and strawberries and melons and potatoes. We've got some of the history there, and he also added horseradish. Horseradish, I think, with his Hunsinger's German, so with his German heritage, planted horseradish as a crop to see how it would do. And it really flourished. It flourished in Wisconsin, in the soil that we have here with the variety that he started with. And one of the reasons for that is we're near, in Eau Claire, we're near the 45th parallel. So halfway between the equator and the North Pole. So temperature wise, it's kind of ideal for horseradish. And you're going to find horseradish growing regions all over the globe, kind of around that 45th parallel on both the northern hemisphere and potentially in the southern hemisphere as well. If you look at Europe and some of the growing regions, it's fascinating. It grows well here. Beans grow well here. Cranberries grow well here. So there's some interesting, with the temperature and the soil. In the southern climates, where it's warmer, you have more sun and more energy is going into these big, beautiful green leaves, which we do nothing with. We are interested in big, bulky, hardy roots that are under the ground, and they kind of bulk up for the winter. So we want that cold winter, that frost that helps with the product development. So I think the soil was good here, and the another part of horseradish is you can keep it in cold storage. We like to say you have to keep horseradish cold to keep it hot. So we refrigerate it through its entire process, whether it's in cold storage in the ground naturally here in Wisconsin, or when we pull it out of the ground for harvest, we put it into cold storage, and then we can wait until we're able to grind it. So for Ellis Hunsinger, when he started, he was able to store the horseradish that he harvested before it froze in the coolers and then grind it and sell it during the winter months and help augment his income through the winter versus some of the other crops, which is harder to do that, to have a market for them in the wintertime. And horseradish, that's when people are using it. Typically, they're using it around the holidays. They're using it for Thanksgiving and for Christmas time, for New Year's. It's a great way to mix into cocktail sauce for shrimp and Prime rib, obviously, roast beef, those types of things, beverages, Bloody Marys. Um, you can mix it in with applesauce for pork chops. One of my favorite products is the cranberry horseradish, which is really good with pork or with poultry. The way we landed upon that is being in a family business that has a horseradish farm. We always had horseradish on the table growing up. And during Thanksgiving, we'd make our own fresh cranberry sauce, like many people do. And the two commingled on the plate, mixed together, and we're like, man, this is excellent. We should bring this to market. Maybe someone will buy it. So it's been fun coming up with new products. Sometimes that way, and sometimes with a little bit more of market research and looking to see what consumers are looking for. So that's kind of how we got started, and then it grew from there. It was a regional brand, and we became national. So right now we are the number one brand of horseradish in the U.S. We sell primarily our products domestically in the U.S., a little bit to Canada. We have shipped products overseas. One of the problems with that for us is just refrigerated products. It's really expensive to get it there. And there are other growing regions in Europe. So a lot of the horseradish that supplies that market comes from there. And then there's actually a growing region in China for horseradish, but what they're primarily using that for is dehydrating it and turning it into wasabi powder. Most wasabi that you have is actually 99% of it is dehydrated horseradish with green food coloring. So,
Wow, I didn't know
um,
that.
yep, there's real wasabi out there, but it's just really expensive. We've tried to grow it ourselves here. Um, 70, 80, $90 a pound, something like that. We can raise commercial horseradish for less than $1 a pound. So yeah, there's just huge difference in cost, but the chemical makeup that makes it hot gives that signature nose searing heat is essentially the same chemical. Horseradish and wasabi are in the mustard family. It's a brassica. So mustard has it too. The center of mustard has that pungency. So a really good mustard will almost taste like a horseradish mustard, partly because it's got that same kind of signature heat.
This doesn't happen where we're both just left speechless, but there's just so much that I don't know that I just learned. So for folks who might not have tried horseradish already, could you maybe describe the taste a little bit, and then what does the plant look like? When I first heard that we are going to be talking to you, I immediately my mind went to horseradish looking like I knew it was a root, but I didn't know if it looked like a ginger, like if it looked like ginger, if it looked like ginseng. I guess I don't know what the plant looks like itself. How do you grow it? Kind of walk us through the growing process, what it looks like, all of that other fun stuff.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned it right off the bat. The name is kind of bizarre. Horse, it has nothing to do with horses, and it's not even a radish. So, go figure. I'm stuck with this product to try to bring to the world. But other countries call it different things that are more appropriate, like pepper root in Sweden, kren in Austria, which means to cry. That's the signature feature of the plant. Um, the heat comes from this enzymatic reaction when predators are biting the root. So when you put horseradish in your mouth, the root itself it's not hot, but as soon as you start chewing on it, it's releasing this blast of heat. The technical chemical in there is called, it's a mouthful, allylisothiocyanate. I'm going to test you on both on that later.
Let me write that
That's
down real
harder than
quick.
horseradish. I cannot.
AITC. So that's what's in mustard. That's what gives it its heat, and horseradish its heat, and wasabi its heat. And there's different levels of it. And there are compounds in horseradish that when you break up the root cells, it creates this ephemeral flavor which goes up into your nose sting, makes your eyes water, and gives it its signature flavor. So that's what we're looking for. That's why we like it. and it's kind of like a roller coaster ride. It's pretty intense right off the bat, but then it will dissipate over time, unlike capsaicin, which is the chemical that's in a pepper. So if you have a jalapeno or a habanero or ghost peppers, or there is a way to measure the different levels of capsaicin in a pepper. Dr. Scoville created Scoville units to measure that, so you can compare one pepper from another. We thought this was such a great idea that we did it for our category for horseradish. We developed a heat index for horseradish so we can compare the levels of allylisothiocyanate in different roots and different products, so that we could segment the market and let consumers who maybe wanted a lower heat level to try a lower level product, and then those that really like it hot, blast your nose, make your eyes water, the pain, no pain, no gain. We can have a product for them as well. So we call it the zing factor. We developed it. We developed the way to measure it, and we are just this year excitingly putting it on the package across our range of horseradish products. So you have on our lower level, it's a cranberry horseradish, a zing factor to 1. Our prepared horseradish, which is our mainstream product, number 1 item, is right in the middle of the scale, zing factor of 3. And then we have an extra hot horseradish that really knocks your socks off. That's a zing factor of 5. And beyond that, it's just kind of too hot to want to use. So you can have products that are hotter than that, but it's maybe not advisable because you're going to be pretty painful.
Are there
So
different, sorry,
yeah,
are there different varieties of horseradish, or are these zings just based on like your recipe of making the product?
there are different varieties of horseradish. We tend to use one primarily that we grow. It's called Big Top Western, and the reason why we use that variety is because it grows really well here. It's got kind of a thicker, hardier skin. It gets enough bulk for us, but it's got a nice flavor and heat profile that we're looking for. There are some other growers in Collinsville, Illinois area. There's a big growing region down there. A lot of families, multi-generational families, growing horseradish, and they've been playing around with different varieties of horseradish for years. So they're actively operating maybe 50 or 60 different varieties right now that they're creating themselves by crossing different plants from different backgrounds to try to increase the bulk, prevent, improve disease resistance, and also heat. And so they've had some success with that. Um, those varieties we've tried, some varieties up here in Wisconsin, in our soil and in climate, and they don't perform as well. So we haven't attempted to do our own kind of breeding program, so to speak, just because I feel like we're pretty happy with what we got. But those roots will taste different. You can go into our cooler, and we buy from them too. We're growing about 70% of what our needs are. So we're buying about 30% of what we need on the market, largely from those growers down in Collinsville, Illinois. And we can try different characteristics. So the heat, the color, the bitterness, they all kind of come across on the scale. And we can do a root blend in our processing system here, so we can have a more consistent finished good product. For a consumer standpoint, we kind of want you to have a consistent heat level and flavor profile. Difficult to do because horseradish changes so much from year to year, field to field, like anything else. But if we can do a root blend and make adjustments, and we have that heat index, so we can measure the heat level to make sure that we're kind of delivering for consumers a more consistent product. So I think that's one of the advantages we have, being growers, but also having the ability to blend different roots to achieve that consistency.
That's really interesting. So, what what does the farm look like, I guess, right now, and how do you grow them? You said that they're in the ground over winter. So are they a perennial plant or are they a harvest and immediately replant? What does
Yeah,
that
so
look
they're
like?
perennials, but we still harvest in the spring and the fall. We have both. So we're approaching our fall harvest here. Um, we have roots in the ground that we planted last fall or before that. Generally, we leave them in the ground, the sets in the ground for a 12-month growing period. It can be 18 months. It can be up to 2 years. Anything before 12 months, we're not getting a yield out of it, and we're not getting flavor development. 18 months is pretty good. I think that's kind of a sweet spot for us. Sometimes we just need the root sooner. 2 years is okay too, but then it's in the ground longer and has more chances for disease, more chances for crown rot, more chances for other things to happen to the root. But it does gain bulk and sometimes heat development over time as well. So 12 to 18 months is kind of our sweet spot. So generally what we do is this fall, we're going to be harvesting roots that we planted last fall. They've had 1 year's growing time, at least one winter to get through, and we'll have a pretty good yield out of that. And when we harvest the horseradish, we're not doing anything with the leaves right now. So we cut the leaves off. The leaves are these big, beautiful green leaves. They can grow to be about waist high. There is some interest in the leaves from a health perspective, but we're not commercializing the leaves at all right now. It's something maybe we can work on in the future. So we cut them and rake them to the side. We go in with our horseradish harvester, which you can't buy at John Deere. You can't just go get one of these things. We took a potato harvester, cut it all apart, put it all back together, modified it for horseradish specifically. That goes in as a blade under the ground, pulls the roots out of the ground, kind of like potatoes and maybe like beets. And we're trying to shake all the soil off as much as possible. But there's these networks of sets and crowns coming around. So they're, depending on the soil it's in, they can come up in a big dirt ball. So we're trying to knock that off, leave that soil in the field if we can. And then we haul it back to our facility here in Eau Claire. It's our underground facility. It's our cold storage facility. And it stays in there until we're ready to grind it and bottle it. Before that, though, it runs across our belt line, and we cut pieces of the horseradish root off. They're called sets. They actually grow, they're extensions off of the root itself. And we're looking for sets about 6 to 8 inches long, about as thick as your thumb. And we are collecting those as we're harvesting and as we bring them back to the underground. And then that's our seed stock. We go back out in the field then and plant the sets, and then those a year from that planting will be ready to harvest. Same cycle. So we are able to propagate our own horseradish indefinitely with this style. Now we learned the hard way. You can't grow the same crop in the same field year after year and expect to have good things happen. And that's exactly what my grandfather and great grandfather did. And they ran into all sorts of problems. So verticillium wilt was a disease that attacked potatoes that came after horseradish. They had yield issues. So they transitioned and set us up for a 5 to 7 year crop rotation in Wisconsin, where we're growing horseradish and then followed by corn and soybeans and oats and alfalfa. And we've got snap beans in some cases. So we look for rotation crops in the between years to be sustainable. And it's great as we know more now than they did back then about soil science and biodiversity and all the benefits that you get from having plants that are able to do different things in the soil, from being nitrogen fixing to needing nitrogen to looking for different nutrients in the soil or maintaining the soil for better moisture retention. We're leaning hard into regenerative agriculture with cover cropping now to keep more crops in even all winter. So we're planting rye to help us with this and be able to utilize have better soil in nutrient banks and access to the nutrients, but also be able to use fewer chemicals, artificial fertilizers and stuff like that. If we can kind of generate it naturally, that's going to be better for us and better for the land long term. So those are all things that we've been doing for a long time, but we're leaning pretty hard into doing more of them and really understanding why they're beneficial for us. And we need to do them so that we can continue to focus on the horseradish and plant health long term. So yeah, that's kind of the life cycle of a horseradish root. It sits in the cold storage, and then we have a cleaning process. We use a lot of water for that, and it gets cleaned and inspected and goes through metal detection and X-ray to make sure there's no foreign material from the fields that we don't want getting into the finished product for humans consumption, of course, but also our equipment doesn't like nuts and bolts running through it either, the grinding equipment. So so then we have up here in our processing facility, it gets ground. The natural root gets ground and then mixed with vinegar and salt and water, and that's it. Very simple natural product. I think it's in as consumers are looking at their diet and healthy condiments. We're kind of right there in the sweet spot because it's just got a ton of flavor, it got a ton of benefits, and there's no sugar, fat, cholesterol, or any of that stuff. So
What are
simple,
some
very
of the
simple
health
ingredients.
what are some of the health benefits other than cleaning your sinuses out? I mean, there has to be some other benefits because it's a hot, it's a spicy condiment. So, I mean, for people to have tried this and keep coming back to it, there has to be something good that comes along with all that flavor.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of research out there about the benefits of horseradish. We are not able to make some of those health claims ourselves, but what some of the other research out there is saying is really good for digestion. It's good for nasal congestion. There's some antibacterial properties in it. I think empirically a long time ago, it's a natural complement for meat and seafood. So if you put horseradish on steak or on seafood, this antibacterial property of horseradish, I think, helped kill some of the food pathogens before refrigeration, and people just got sick less often, when they paired those two together. So, that's one of the reasons they also taste good. I think there's a benefit, a complementary benefit by having horseradish to meat and seafood. But I think, a long time ago, this has been a condiment that's been around for a long time. That's one of the reasons why they just don't get sick as often. So let's put those two let's put those two together. That sounds pretty cool. Um, there are some pharmaceutical companies that are looking at horseradish and utilizing a property in horseradish called horseradish peroxidase, and we've talked to a few of those, and we actually sold horseradish roots for the peroxidase in them, and they're using that in a lot of research for cancer and for a whole other things. There's just a booming field there post COVID, and just what can you do with horseradish peroxidase? I don't know all the particulars on that, but I thought that was kind of interesting. It'd be fun to do more if there was a heavy research into some of the other health benefits of horseradish. But it's got good vitamins and nice natural healthy product. And
So
it makes your roast beef sandwich taste better, which is what
it
I'm
does.
mostly focused on.
Is horseradish, I mean, I know it's big in like the Midwest area, and I know you've kind of said that there's obviously a lot of growers around the world for it. Is it as big as it seems in the Midwest, or is there a market for it really all over the world?
Yeah, actually, the biggest markets for our products are in the Northeast.
Okay.
So New York is the largest market by volume. Philadelphia market is the highest per capita consumption of horseradish. So, uh, volume a little smaller than New York, but by per capita, they're using more of it. Um, and then you kind of bounce around a little bit to Southern California. LA market's pretty big. I mean, you can imagine Chicago is big to Florida. So those are the kind of and then DC, Baltimore area also. There's a lot of consumption. Those are the kind of the big the big bulky markets. Um, there's a demographic. It's used for Passover, and we make a kosher for Passover product. It's actually represents the bitter herb, so it's served as part of that tradition. Um, and so it's a big time for Passover and with the Jewish population as well, and for a whole variety of holidays, Rosh Hashanah coming up. Yom Kippur, Hanukkah. So wherever there's kind of maybe a large Eastern European demographic, there tends to be a good market for horseradish.
I'm interested. So, you said your grandfather started the farm?
Great grandfather.
Your
Yep.
great grandfather. Okay, so if you could sit down with your great grandfather and show him what things are like today, what do you think would be the biggest changes from when he started to where you're at today?
He would be blown away with the scale of the facility and the production and the amount of pounds, and then the whole variety of other things that we make. And that what he started back then is continuing on in a family business. It is so rare to make it here to fourth and fifth generation. Congratulations. Um, and I'm seeing in our industry in horseradish, it's not happening all the time. I just kind of thought this was normal. This is just what happens. No, it's not. There's a lot of consolidation happening. A lot of the next generation that's not getting into these businesses and carrying them on. So I feel very, very fortunate that Ellis started the company and was successful, and then the next generations after him continued to make improvements, and that's essentially what I'm trying to do. My number one goal for the company is to leave it in better shape for the next generation than when I found it. I feel like I'm a caretaker, and I want to do good with it, and make improvements, and I think one of the advantages we have maybe than some other types of business structures is we can be multi-generational and long-term planning, long-term thinking. And, I can make an investment now that's not going to get me a return next year. And I've done a
Mm-hmm.
couple of those. Um, some of the investments we did in solar, those are going to be 5, 6, 7 year returns on that. I think it's the right thing to do. It'll help us. It'll pay for itself in 5, 6, 7 years. Generally, I want a quicker return on that, but on that capital, that resource that's so scarce sometimes in family businesses. But it sets us up, I think, well for 10 years from now, 15 years from now. When my kids are old enough to come in and play around in the business, are they going to look back and say, these were good decisions? Maybe some of them weren't. I don't know, but we have the intention of a kind of long-term planning. So we we had a lot of trials and tribulations through the years too. It wasn't guaranteed that we were going to make it here, and I'm sure we will face our own challenges moving forward for the next 30 years. Um, but that's part of the fun of it. How do you face them on? Take them head on and be innovative and find ways around it, like those before us did to get us here. So it's pretty exciting, I think, to have this opportunity and do some good with it.
That's
Yeah,
something I
I
always really admire about multi-generational farms is just see how far they've come since when they first started and then once you can talk to your kids or your grandkids to see what they appreciate that generations did before them to set them up for success because it's never just about you, it's always thinking ahead to the future generations. So I'm always happy to hear that. I come from a multi-generational family as well, so it's always appreciated knowing that we're not the only farm thinking that way. So kudos to you guys for doing that too.
One other thing Ellis, I think, would be surprised at is our product probably tastes exactly the same as it did. It's the same variety. So we've been doing it this way. So I think that might be pretty pleasing. He didn't have cranberry horseradish back then, so I think he liked some of the new flavors that we've come up with. But yeah, I would be fun. I never got to meet him, and I never got to meet my grandfather. So my this is on my mom's side of the family, the business, and it would have been cool to meet them, and hear their perspective, and I'd ask them a ton of questions. I'm sure that would be fun. But yeah, I didn't get that opportunity, so we'll have to make do and charge on ahead.
looking forward. Do you guys have any like big plans that you want to do? I know obviously, keeping everything sustainable for the next generation if they wanted to take it over. Do you have anything else, like is expansion on your mind or just continuing to be innovative, things like that?
Yeah, one thing I'm really worried about is the labor market and access to labor for both the ag side and also in food production. We were maybe 5 years ago really struggling to get local farm labor, to help us there. And then, we were no different than everybody else in manufacturing with the Great Resignation and kind of the loss of labor. So we've had to make some adjustments, and I'm thinking about that as we move forward. How can we do more? How can we be more efficient, essentially, with the same or less, even less labor? So, are there things we can leverage technology-wise, automation, um, precision agriculture? I love that concept for the farm because it means we can just deliver what the crop or the plant needs and nothing more, nothing less. We can just water what it needs, nothing more, nothing less. That's going to be just less labor, less wear and tear on equipment, less fuel. Great for being more environmentally friendly, but also great economics. And if we have a shortage of labor that continues, and I think if you look at the demographics, it's not real promising for a while. We're probably going to all be facing some of these challenges. So, how can we, you know, leverage ourselves every labor hour in a more efficient way? And there's a lot of opportunities. There are things we're doing still that we can streamline and tighten up, both on the farm and in food production. Just, even food waste, just making sure we got more product in the bottle. Come on, guys. Can't sell it if it hits the floor. So
Yeah.
let's make sure we can sell everything we make and don't lose any inefficiencies there. Um, so I think that's going to be facing all of us.
Hmm.
Just the labor challenges and what can we do to be more efficient. As far as our
Yeah.
expansion plans, I think they're going to be along the lines of um, automation and being able to make more with less, and maybe changing the style jobs that we have because they're hard to fill. Some of these positions. So
Yeah. Well, Eric, I don't want to take too much of your time tonight, but we appreciate you for stopping by so much. I know I learned a whole lot that I didn't before. So, where can people go to find your product online, or maybe learn a little bit more about your farm and family history?
that's a great question. I think the best source of information would be our website, which is www.silverspringfoods.com. And that's got our history. It's got the information about the Zing factor I mentioned, showcases all the products we make, and we even have a store locator function there. So you can just, go to the store locator function, product locator, type in your zip code, put in the product you're looking for, and it'll shoot back, if we have that product within, a short distance of where it is that you're looking for it. Now, we sell a lot of different products. Silver Spring, our flagship products are refrigerated horseradish products. So it's kind of tricky because there's no horseradish section of the grocery store that is just clearly marked. I wish they would do this, but they don't. Horseradish section over here, like come buy it. It's in the dairy. Typically, there's two ways to get it to market since we have to keep it cold channel. We've historically with Silver Spring partnered with dairy distributors, so we're generally selling to dairy buyers at the supermarket, and so we're in the refrigerated dairy case. So that's a mouthful, but that's a great place to look for our refrigerated horseradish products. Our mustards are easier. They're generally in the condiments section, the mustard section of a center store grocery store. And then sometimes you can find some of our products in the seafood set, because meat and seafood is a great place to have condiments like ours. Generally, people aren't going to the store to buy horseradish alone or eat it by itself. They're generally figuring out the center of the plate first, and then we're a tag along. So if we can get our product closer to the meat and the seafood, that's always a win for us, for in-store merchandising and kind of getting those impulse purchases there. But we have the ability to sell it online too. Shipping's a little expensive, but it is available. It's going to be more economical if you can find it in your local market.
Awesome.
But
Yeah,
I really, really appreciate the opportunity to, tell our story and share some of the good things that we're doing.
sorry, you guys froze on me.
I will link your website in the show notes below, along with your social media handle as well, because I did see on Instagram that you posted a video about making an after school snack with Triscuits and creamy peanut butter and the cranberry horseradish. And I'm very interested to try that because that is not a combination I would have thought of on my own. So I'm gonna go try that because you guys, I'm gonna trust you on this one. It sounds a little wacky, but I'm gonna trust you.
It is, but it's surprisingly delicious. So yeah, some of the more unusual serving suggestions are the ones that you remember most. You're like peanut butter and really, I gotta try
I
that.
I
I
gotta
don't
try
believe
it.
it.
That's called good marketing.
It
Yep.
is. It got
And
my
the
attention.
cottage cheese, there's like a cottage cheese craze right now with mustard. I don't know if you guys seen this.
Oh, with mustard? No, that's a
Yeah.
new one.
So mustard and cottage cheese. So we're doing that because we make mustard, but also horseradish and cottage cheese is great. And then we tried my marketing team. I was telling them about my college days where they had horseradish and cottage cheese as a dip for with Ruffles potato chips. It's delicious. And then they're
Mm.
like, well, would you want to try it with cranberry and see how that goes? And that was even better. I thought it was
Oh, I
great. We
bet.
gave it a red color, and
Yeah.
with the Ruffles potato chips, it was amazing. So I'd give that a shot too.
I
Well,
think I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
have
be
to.
busy.
I know, I'm all about the cottage cheese movement right now. Like, I love it. And I'm thinking that might be good. I'm not like a super hot person. Like, I
Try
just, that's,
cranberry. Cranberry will be good. Yeah.
It
yeah,
is good.
but blending it with with cottage cheese as a dip, that sounds
That
so
would be
good.
good.
Healthy
I'm gonna
dip,
do that.
right? Great for
Yeah.
the dairy industry, great for cranberries, great for horseradish. So I think it's a
It works for all of
win-win-win.
us.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Win for Wisconsin.
We're on to something now. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. Tonight, we really appreciate it. I have learned so much, and I think I'm gonna like go deep dive into ways that I can use horseradish now. If you guys enjoyed listening, please let us know. You can leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and a lot of other places, I think. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube at Forward Farming Podcast. You can find Amber at Cranberrychats, and I'm over at Beccahilby. Does Silver Spring have an Instagram page?
We do.
All right. Do you want to plug that? Is it just Silver Spring Foods?
It is.
All
Yes.
right. So go check them out too. Amber and I will probably be tagging them as we create these new horseradish creations. But thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.